Hi everybody, before we get into this next episode, I just wanted to say a few words about our sponsor. We are absolutely delighted to have this episode sponsored by sportingbounce.com. This is a trusted directory connecting you with qualified and in-training sports psychologists across the UK and Ireland. So if you're looking to improve performance, boost confidence, manage pressure or support well-being in sport, you'll find the right professional there. You can search by location, sport or specialism and even choose between face-to-face or online sessions. Really importantly, every psychologist listed is verified and working to recognise professional standards, so you know you're in good hands. Take the next step with your sporting success. Visit sportingbounce.com and connect with sports psychologists who can help you unlock your full potential. That's sportingbounce.com, sportingbounce.com, helping athletes perform better, feel better and thrive. We hope you enjoy the episode, guys. Hi everybody, Stu's told me that we have to do a new intro every time we do a small segment. So,
well, I just think you can think about like the superlatives that you use to describe me and introduce me.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to give it a go?
No. Can't
I got nothing.
Can't think of any.
Can't think of anything.
I thought I had some in here, but no, nothing in there.
Just Stu.
Yeah, I'm with Stu.
Okay, I'm with Martin.
Welcome back, everybody. We are rationally speaking. Are we?
Well, if you've just listened to the previous episode where we're talking about language and are we talking about helpful speaking?
Yes, maybe
non-limiting speaking.
Yeah. It probably doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
I think rationally speaking.
We are, yeah, okay. We are rationally speaking in a sense that that's what the podcast is called.
Let's get on with it because we're going to lose some people already.
Yeah, we've done 5 minutes on basically nothing. This is a show where we talk about something called rational emotive behavior therapy, which is an approach to psychology, I would say, that kind of has very specific features, very specific definitions of terms, and most of that we've kind of gone over in previous theoretical type episodes, and we always come back to it anyway because that's kind of what we like to do. I'm Martin Turner, this is Stuart Carrington, and we are really kind of interested in performance psychology.
Yes.
We do drift into other areas, but we're coming at this from a performance kind of sport angle, although we don't really talk about that all the time, but you will see episodes where we relate specifically to specific athletes, actually.
Yeah, I say this to like people that I work with like really frequently. I kind of use a lot of like sporting examples and some other examples as well. I think sport is just like an area that people can identify with a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's that kind of performance aspect, the evaluative aspect of it. There's also very clear boundaries of success and failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel that sport kind of lends itself to it quite nicely. But that said, obviously REBT is really flexible and be applied across a range of areas. As people that would have seen other podcasts that we've recorded, we've spoken about film. We should definitely do one on music, about how we can see REBT in music, literature, etc.
Yes, that's right. Yes, you'll see kind of a variety of videos and episodes in the channel. If you want to check them out, please subscribe and leave us a comment. Ask us to cover things and talk about things, and we will endeavour to do so. We're going to talk about something here that has kind of been, I wouldn't say it's a bone of contention, although I have said that now. So I have to figure out whether to edit that out or not. No, I suppose it's a bone of contention.
Yep.
It's kind of an interesting aspect of REBT. So we have this person, this Dr. Albert Ellis, who develops rational psychotherapy, or rational therapy as it was then in the 50s and early 60s. We now know it today as REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy. It was rational emotive therapy for a time. So we're talking about something that's long history in psychology terms, because psychology is not that old. We have a long history of this. So this person develops this idea, and when we see that individual communicating about REBT, particularly when we start to see video and we hear audio of Ellis practicing REBT, we can sometimes make the faulty assumption that REBT should be practiced in the way that Ellis practiced it. Or in other words, that REBT is an extension of Ellis. So when we're using REBT, in some ways we are kind of embodying Ellis when we do it. And that's probably a problem. What do you think?
Okay, so here's like maybe a way of kicking this off. One really appealing feature of REBT for me is that it seems to be very much couched in the scientific principle.
Yeah.
And if we look at scientific method and the scientific approach, there are kind of 4 aspects to this, 4 pillars. And one of those pillars that's really important to me is that you sort of reject the idol aspect of it. So you reject this kind of guru that has all the answers. And if we even trace this back to, kind of ancient Greece, we have someone like Socrates saying, the only thing I know is I know nothing at all.
Yeah.
Now, I feel that Ellis would have been a proponent for that. I feel that Ellis certainly was in his writing and his autobiography and other writings around this individual. It was, let's challenge and contemplate and refine this approach of that I believe, that I have experienced and refined myself, and therefore, I think as a general statement, we can say Ellis is not REBT.
Yeah.
We can obviously say that Ellis is a key factor in the development of this approach. Of
course.
But for me, what's perhaps more important is how we apply it. And I guess the sort of the meaning behind that question is, how important is the practitioner? Is the practitioner the tool? We know through research, if you're doing like qualitative research, for instance, the practitioner is really important because the questions that I may ask in an interview might be different from yours. And also when we analyze, yes, we can get in a critical friend, but there's going to be an element of subjectivity there.
Yeah.
We don't live in like an epistemological vacuum. So when we look at REBT, like how important am I as the practitioner in the success of this intervention, this approach? Does it matter?
It's a good point, isn't it? Because I always think of everything we do is intervention, particularly in sport, because say if you're with a team, you're around a lot, you're having conversations and you're behaving in that context, then just your presence there is an intervention. Because if you weren't there, then things would be different. So it's obviously important who you are and what you bring to it, because you're the one wielding this tool, this REBT, and how you and I practice would be slightly different. Would we get the same outcomes? That's the really tricky thing to kind of nail down, and there isn't that much research that has done that. Only when you bring together the masses of evidence can you really see some of this stuff. But it's not the same as doing a study where you and I have 10 clients each. We track them. Actually, it wouldn't just be you and I. We'd have to have lots of practitioners that have 10 clients each, for example, and they have the exact same problem.
Sure.
Right? And then we go through and we measure the outcomes and we find essentially the same outcomes. Or the person would have to have the exact same irrational belief, or to do this perfectly, you would have the exact same client, and so would lots of other practitioners, the exact same person. And after they've worked with you, we wipe their memories and they work with me. Wipe their memories, they work with the next one.
Or we clone them.
Exactly. So actually finding this out, how important is the person, becomes basically impossible. Practically difficult to the point where it hasn't been studied yet, and probably won't be studied because of those practical problems. Just at the level of all of the clients have to have the same issue, the exact same issue.
Also, they have to have the same environment as well. Because REBT would suggest, well, actually, the adversity is important. It's not non-important. It's there. It happens, and it is going to influence us slightly. Just our beliefs mediate it.
Same goals, same adversity. So it gets very improbable you're going to be able to do that. So it's very hard to actually find this out properly. What we do know from evidence is the working alliance seems to be the most important factor when we think about the kind of efficacy of therapy. Okay, so we know the relationship is the dominant factor that drives the success, the effectiveness of the therapy. So that's obviously something to do with me as a practitioner, but it's also something to do with you as the client.
You mentioned that, so let's just stop on that for a second. So this is really important, this working alliance. So let's say we're working together.
No.
And let's say I'm the client. And are you saying that for this intervention to be effective, we would have to report a high level of like coach-athlete relationship almost?
You wouldn't have to report high level, but the higher the level, the more likely the therapy is to be effective. Now, it doesn't mean that if you don't have a good working alliance, it won't be.
Sure.
Because everything's got a margin of error.
Yeah.
But it's just that when we've done the analyses, I've never done this. We as a psychology discipline have done this analysis. There is a relationship between a stronger working alliance and therapeutic outcomes. Now, this is interesting for REBT for lots of reasons. One of the reasons it's interesting is because Ellis didn't seem to sweat over this.
Right.
In what we know of his demonstrations. That's the first point. The second point is REBT literature doesn't sweat over this. Now, most REBT writers, Dryden, Ellis, Daniel David,
Turner,
and the trainers that that I've kind of worked with and interacted with, Richard Bennett, Jason Jones, Peter Trower, Di Giuseppe, all these big figures in REBT, they would say that, it's important, but they're not going to spend ages and ages talking about this. They go into the processes and the mechanisms of REBT,
Sure.
In the book Rational Practitioner, available in all good bookstores, I spend a bit of time on it, but it's like 2% of the book maybe. We know it's important. It's like, fine, but the point in REBT is that it's not enough for change. It's not enough to just have a good working alliance and just chew the fat for a little bit. At some point, we're going to have to get down to change. And our theory of change in REBT is really kind of cognitive and behavioral change. Like, how can we shift these beliefs to get you to behave differently? Or how can we directly intervene with the behavior itself? So I think that's the two issues for me. Is like, yes, we know it's important, but somebody coming into REBT literature might see an absence of that of working alliance type language.
I think it's important. I think it's really key for listeners to understand why Ellis really wasn't bothered about it. So Ellis, he kind of really rejected this idea that I want to say therapist, practitioner is probably the better word, that the practitioner has to be liked and that there has to be this really wonderful relationship. So Ellis used to host Friday night sessions in New York, and it would be kind of really accessible for everyone, and he would just invite questions and challenges, etc., etc. And one person that he was kind of like working with, actually said, I probably like you the least out of anyone that I've spoken to, from a therapeutic sense before, but you've helped me the most.
Yeah.
And Ellis was like, so I don't care. If
all in a day's work.
Yeah. Sue me.
That means nothing to me. Next question.
But he was like saying, it's nice. Again, we go to these preferences, I guess. It would be nice if we liked each other. Great. We don't have to. Like it's nothing more than that. What's the important thing is that goal of I want to help.
What's the aims of the work that we're doing?
Exactly that.
My point is to get to those aims, do we need to foster some sort of therapeutic relationship? I would say yes. And in my experience, I think it's been fundamental to the work that I've done, developing a therapeutic relationship and having a good, strong working alliance, to the extent that I would work on it in every session. Not like, right, here's the working alliance bit, that's ticked off. But it's just constantly there for me. I'm constantly looking for opportunities to strengthen our relationship. One of the reasons for that is because I need to make sure that what I say to you is taken as it's intended, and that you understand the kinds of things that I'm going to say, but more so that I understand you. So I'm trying to make sense of what you're experiencing. Now, the stronger our relationship is, the more sense I'm going to be able to make of it. The words you use, the way you behave when you say certain things. Now, I can't fake that. There's nothing I can read about humans that's going to tell me about you. So I think that he had a way of working that fitted a culture and maybe a time. Having trained in New York, there is certainly a cultural component to that kind of direct way of getting there quickly.
Yeah.
You know, I completely get that. And we used to laugh on the training course about the nuanced differences between me as a Brit coming over with my certain ways and their ways. So it fits that place and that way of working, but we can't make the faulty assumption that that's how we have to practice RBT. We don't have to do it the way Ellis did it. We don't have to do it the way Dryden did it. Nobody has to do it the way we do it. I say Dryden because he's the British figure.
Sure.
And there's other figures around the world practicing in their own cultures, and Michael Bernard in Australia. So they'll do it in their way that fits the people they work with, and they've found a way to work it kind of interpersonally, but it's still REBT, and the features are still exactly the same. REBT isn't explicit about how it should be practiced. It doesn't say you have to take on this persona or this demeanor. When we watch Ellis practice in videos and hear him in the audio, we've got to try to understand that he's providing you with a demonstration of a framework that he invented. That's how you've got to look at those things. Don't look at them as actual therapy.
Right.
Whenever somebody puts in front of a camera, we're trying to have a natural conversation, but our conversation might be different if the cameras weren't here. I mean, you'd be effing and jeffing for a start.
Yeah. You'd sort of be having to sort of constantly look at your notes.
I wouldn't even be in the room with you if the cameras weren't here, though. I'm just here for the podcast. That's the difference. But
I have to say, like, every time we talk, the amount of REBT I have to apply to myself, you sort of
to recover from
from the institutional bullying that occurs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like to present you with lots of adversities.
Exactly. Yeah. I've made myself anti-fragile.
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Well done. So I think that you got to see those as demonstrations.
Yeah.
You learn REBT, you train in it, you add your own nuances and ways of working within your culture and context, and with the people you're aiming to work with. You figure out what works as you go and the way to pitch things and how to develop relationships. So I would be cautious about saying to people, well, in REBT, we're not that bothered about working alliance. I think we are, but it's almost like, okay, I get it. It's important. Let's focus on the mechanisms of change.
The hierarchy of importance.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, in some approaches, the mechanism of change is, if not work and alliance, strongly associated with work and alliance or adjacent to work and alliance. It's like that's actually the kind of therapeutic principle. So we know it's important and it can be therapeutic and helpful for people. It's just that RBT sort of accepts that and says, but there's lots of issues and challenges that might take a very long time to solve if we take that approach. But if we can generate a therapeutic relationship and set our aims and figure it out, then we can use these processes to get there a bit quicker.
Okay.
Probably much quicker than some approaches. Now, speed isn't, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We have to do something that works, but it's also efficient.
Sure.
You know what I mean? We don't have to, but that's the aim.
And we know that efficiency is something that's kind of this bedrock of REBT. Ellis famously said he had a gene for efficiency, whereas Freud had a gene for inefficiency.
Yeah.
Dryden's one at a time therapy.
Yeah.
So this is an approach where we're not looking at one problem at a time. We're saying you book one session.
Yeah.
And we would never say, oh, you need 6, you need 10.
We assume that session is the last time that we're going to interact with the person. So we try to get everything we can out of that session. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. So I guess I remember doing the training and the trainer was saying, I would just go straight in and say, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Whereas some people with maybe more background in kind of therapy or therapeutic approaches than I had at the time were sort of saying, oh, what about rapport building? We asking them how they are. And they were saying, well, don't ask them how they are. They've got a problem. Well, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So go get to it, It's
interesting, isn't it? That opening question is something that you hear talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I tend to go with, what's your problem? Or what's the matter with you now? No, I don't. No. I tend to say something like, what's going on at the moment?
Yeah.
Because that's how I speak. You know what I mean? That's how I would, you know what I mean? Other people say, what's occurring for you at the moment? Or tell me about, what you're experiencing. We do focus too much on that question. All you're trying to do is try to move things forward quite quickly to get that person to say, here's what I'm facing. Yeah. Now, the issue with doing it directly is that they're not quite ready to tell you that yet. Sure. And actually, they want to figure you out.
Yeah.
See, this is where the cultural piece really makes a difference.
Yeah.
In Britain, for British people, it wouldn't be typical that we would just tell somebody what our problems are, or our neuroses are. We would wait. You know what I mean? Whereas in other cultures, it might be more typical to say, oh, this, and this.
Or even slower in other cultures.
Even slower. No, absolutely. I suppose I'm just comparing the two places I've trained, UK and America. In America, when doing the training, the person that you're counselling, if they're American, they were very quick to say, this is what's going on. You're straight in. Whereas even when I was the client, I struggled to do that.
Sure.
I had to dance around it a little bit until I figured out what the issue was.
Yeah.
So I think that you should just focus on being like a normal person in those conversations, and let this stuff happen rather than forcing it. Now, when you're being peer observed and you've got 15 minutes to practice the model, then that's different.
Yeah.
It's like all business, isn't it? But actually, think in the real world, you can be a lot more softer and nuanced, and really focus on the relationship piece by having a softer landing, but also just using language that you would normally use when you're interacting with people. I don't think you need to develop a special technique for asking the opening question.
Well, I guess you don't want to make an assumption as well on behalf of the other person about what they want and how they want to approach.
There might not be a problem.
Yeah.
They might just want a chat with you around the training pitch about how could I improve.
Yeah.
You say, what's the problem? Straight away there.
Well, this is another thing we're going to talk about, or we're going to do an episode around, which is perhaps this sort of like negative focus, negative bias.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's exclusive to REBT. I think that's something around sports psychology.
And psychology.
Yeah.
Generally, human beings have a negative bias. We are attracted to threats for evolutionary reasons.
Sure.
But when it comes to asking that first question, how's it going today?
Yeah.
What's wrong with just saying, how's it going today?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, you're just, you know what I mean? If you're working clinically, maybe it's different for you. Maybe you're on the clock, maybe there are certain processes that you've got to go through. But for us working in sport, we are really trying to get a good relationship with that person by just being ourselves for a bit.
Yeah.
And then we often then drift into, well, there is this thing, I'm just concerned about this, or I'm worried about that, or I'm just angry. You start to go into those things, but it's not like, right, you've come to see me, so there must be a problem. So tell me what the problem is now so we can get it solved. That doesn't fit with the way that I've experienced our culture.
It might not even be helpful. You might be pathologizing stuff that's like not even there or not significant. It might be kind of normal day-to-day fluctuations in mood or attitudes, and then you're kind of making it more of an issue. But I guess to sort of go back to this is Ellis REBT kind of theme, the difficulty, therefore, is, I mean, already you've said, oh, I would maybe go in with this, and other people will go in with that. Okay, so there's differences in how this thing would be applied and practiced with people, and that's understandable and normal. But at what point then do we say, oh, well, that improvement, that was kind of down to Martin,
Yes.
down to Stu, more than REBT?
I mean, if we're analysing you as a practitioner and the outcomes of the client, then it's inseparable. It's inseparable because it's interpersonal. Like the words are coming from your mouth and they're going into the person's ears and then they're making sense of it and then they're saying something back to you and then you're doing the same. It's very hard to tease the theory out of the interpersonal interaction, isn't it? Like you're just the vehicle through which the theory is being what would you call it? Is being just put out into the world, in the room at that moment. Now, you don't. In some ways, you don't need to tease it apart because psychology is a human study. You know what I mean? It's not like an engineering principle where it's like, well, that's got to work no matter which human being is using it. You know what I mean? There is technical training we need to do to be able to operate using REBT and other frameworks. So it's kind of inseparable, and I'm not sure if it needs to be separated in that way. Again, coming back to a previous discussion we had, to run that study, it gets practically impossible because I'd have to extract therapy from the person and put it in something that isn't embodied. So even if we have a computerized version, a famous study where people didn't know whether they were speaking to a real therapist or a computer therapist and couldn't tell the difference, and the computer was just asking generic therapy type questions, But the therapist in that sense is still embodied. I still might believe there's a person at the end of those questions asking me those things. I'm still thinking those questions are coming from somebody, So I don't know how you would run that study of separating the therapy from the therapist.
Yeah.
Would it be automatic? You'd have to completely separate it. So you could have an online module on REBT, but I would still think somebody's developed this.
Sure.
This is still a human thing.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So to me, in my mind, it's inseparable. I understand the premise of your question.
Sure.
But there's no, in my mind, and people can correct us, there's no solution to this. You end up constraining everything to the point where, you would never do that anyway.
I guess you also have this little bit of like subjectivity and humanism from the other side. So a participant that is, we don't make anyone do this.
Yeah.
So I guess if we were to do the, we spoke about this kind of wonderful ideal test where we would clone people. Actually, what we would also do is individuals wouldn't have any choice about doing this because the fact that you might open it up and invite recruitment would be that, well, now you're attracting a certain type of person. They might have an interest in therapy or personal development, like to start with, or they wouldn't be interested in this.
Yeah.
We already said that we work with sports performers. So sports performers tend to be individuals that want to improve, at least in their chosen field, or they wouldn't be doing it. And so there's an element of like kind of how much of the benefits that we see are embedded in the individual as well as the practitioner.
Yes, absolutely. It's basically what you're talking about is individual differences.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like I applied. This is why it's so difficult to run these types of studies. I applied the same REBT to 8 people. Well, no, you didn't. You didn't for 2 reasons. One is because the dynamic nature of a conversation, so it's going to have changes. Secondly, is because for each of those people, the REBT is going to be completely different because their perception of it is changed. So it's what I mean. You can design something and constrain everything you can possibly constrain, but when you do that, you're basically operating outside the realms of the normal real world, and therefore it's like, well, what's the point? No, I think that the person is important. The practitioner is important, which is why psychotherapy trains people and does so on a competence basis. Like, can you actually execute this in the room when you're working with somebody? And what's the criteria for that competence? And lots of those competencies are interpersonal competencies, you know. So obviously the person is important, or else we wouldn't train people. You know, we would just put it out in the world and say, well, crack on and use it.
Yeah.
But could you have a situation where somebody interacts with therapy completely absent of the therapist? Well, no, because somebody would have to have generated that. Even if ChatGPT puts together a thing, it's still taken from the world of the internet.
Yeah.
Which most of that content is generated by humans.
There's an origin. Yeah.
So I mean, so it is a humanistic theory. It's embedded within humanity, and you can't separate it, even if you separate it.
Do you know what as well? I mean, you mentioned there like humanism. So there are some kind of humanistic strands like throughout REBT. You know, Ellis would advocate unconditional positive regard because you can't judge someone because he would reject the notion of judgment.
Yeah,
you know, and evaluation,
global evaluation. Yeah.
So,
but he wouldn't force himself to positively regard them unconditionally. He would accept them unconditionally.
That's a better way of putting it.
But he wouldn't have that valence. He wouldn't have that positivity. He would say, well, you know, I accept who you are as a fallible human being. It doesn't stop us from working on this stuff. The things that you say and do, we can still crack on with working together. But I think that Ellis would have been been able to strongly develop working alliance with people in a way that I don't think he's written about too much. But this is my sense anyway, from what I've seen and heard people say. There is a way that I can find a connection with you by letting you know that I understand you very quickly. You know, it's like when you meet somebody new for the first time, you just understand each other immediately, that you start getting on. And it's like you can become quite good friends with somebody quite quickly. And I think maybe you've shared similar experiences. Maybe you both have a skill set, which is just that ability to connect with somebody. My sense is that Ellis was probably quite good at revealing things to you that you held quite deeply. And in that revelation, my assumption is then he really understands me.
It's quite an intuitive individual.
So I connect to you quite quickly. You know, if I'm speaking to you for 10 minutes and you say to me, here's what I think is going on, and you absolutely nail it. Wow, this person just understands me. Now, you're doing that because you're listening well. You're picking up on nuances. These are things that can be trained. I don't think you're obviously not born with the ability to do this. But you can be trained in this to be an effective listener and to then be able to tell that individual, here's what I'm taking on board. Here's how I'm seeing it. Tell me if it's accurate or not. Then my guess is that Ellis was probably really good at that, and therefore was able to develop strong working alliance, not through any mechanistic way, or any kind of person-centered way, using counselling skills, as we might term it. My perspective on it, or it's not really a guess because I'm using things I've seen of him and what people have said, but it's still a guess because I don't know Ellis. And, you know, obviously, I never knew Ellis. I think he was really good at that, and I think it helped people to connect to him quite quickly. Oh my God, that's exactly what I've been thinking for years, and I've never articulated it in that way before. So therefore, I'm on board now with the work we're doing.
And I guess that kind of those differences and that connection might explain some slight variations that we might see in the efficacy of these interventions. So although there's foundations of REBT there are there, that the sort of the nuanced differences in the efficacy are found in the relationship. You know, a really good example is the sort of case study I've just finished researching.
My work.
Well, I'm going to talk about my work, Martin. It's important. So we have 7 participants, and one of the variables that I measured was positive reactivity. So essentially, this is like the frequency of positive emotion, how intense that emotion is when it happens, and how long it lasts when it happens. And we also measured negative reactivity. Now, kind of across the board, we found negative reactivity decreased, which is great. With positive reactivity, there was like more fluctuation.
Right.
So some individuals, like it actually went down, like during the intervention.
Yeah.
And then it started to go up, okay, kind of over the course of the year that we measured this. Some people, it kind of spiked up straight away, and then it kind of gradually went down back to a baseline. And then some people just kind of gradually went up. So we had sort of 3 different ways of looking at it. And when I reflect upon this, and I guess, I'll discuss is, is this attributable to me? Is this like the individual difference? Because I had like high procedural integrity, if you like, there was like, here's the steps that we're going to go through with this. But maybe at that time, because, we know that listening and interacting is really important, I was like, oh, maybe we need to focus a little bit more on dialing down the irrationality. Yeah. Whereas with participant 5, it was more about dialing up the rationality.
Yeah, you're making those decisions on the ground on the basis of the context and the individual you're working with.
Yeah.
You can't plan for that because it's completely unpredictable.
Correct.
The conversations you're having are completely unpredictable. Yes, there is a rubric of possible conversations. You're not talking about random things. Yeah. So there is an area that you're staying within, but ultimately you have no control over what that person's going to say. And to some extent, sometimes no control over what you're going to say. Because you're reacting to the person. So you can plan it out, but after the second back and forth, everything changes because that person might say something that then takes you completely away. So you're actually obviously in the moment you're in charge of what you're about to say. I don't mean that you're completely, sort of non-autonomous in that sense. Sure. But you can't plan it from the start is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You have no control over the sequence of events. So it becomes dynamic. It becomes flexible and dynamic.
Oh, people might focus on me and go, right, we really want to talk about this. And it takes up 30 minutes of your session. Yeah. But it's really important. Like that's like an important part. People will progress at different points. When we talk about how we might dispute beliefs, we've spoken about how some people like truth and empiricism is really important. Yeah. And that's kind of the key prong that they go with when they're trying to dispute it. Whereas other people might be pragmatism. It all boils down to that. Is it helping me?
And for others, that's just not going to work generally. Disputation just isn't the way. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we don't do disputation. Let's commit to these helpful alternative ideas. Okay, so we have these irrational beliefs, these unhelpful, self-limiting, however we want to term it with the client we're working with. Got these ideas that aren't helping you and actually are hindering you. Maybe their bag isn't disputation. They don't want to challenge. They're not interested in scientific thought. They don't want to engage in that. Well, how about we develop a set of principles that counter these that aren't helping you, and we just commit to them. We use self-statements. We use affirmations, and these affirmations might just be rational self-statements. Okay, let's just commit to these, and we'll figure out a way that these make their way into your daily life. You might print them out on cue cards and put them in your desk drawer, your work bag, your back pocket, whatever it is. There might be a notification on your phone that pings every 2 hours that reminds you of your rational belief. Maybe you'll use an app to house some of this information. Maybe it's you sitting on the edge of your bed every morning and telling yourself these rational affirmations in a rehearsed approach, kind of in a ritualistic manner. Sure. None of this involves disputation. We don't have to use disputation. We have G, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, well, I'm not doing the D, so you do what works. You don't just do the thing because it's there on the paper to do it. I mean, that's the procedure. But if I'm in a dynamic environment with a client, I'm not just going to hammer D when they're just rejecting D. Yeah. It's not their bag and they don't want to do it. Okay, well, let's just stop working together. Sure. Now, I believe that D is the best route because that's what the evidence indicates. But there's lots of ways of doing things, and you might circle back to that later, or you can find ways to help people that are sometimes off the framework. Obviously, you're still in the broad framework. You don't have to tick off every letter.
Joe, this is fascinating to me because as researchers, we're interested in publication. We want rigor. We want methodology. and as someone that reads the instructions of microphone stands,
You
I
enjoy
would be like,
instructions.
okay, there, we've got to go through this, you know, like step by step. And I would find, you know, I'd probably be less flexible in that application than you.
Let's use microphone stand as an example, right? Okay. So you read the instructions, that screws in there, that goes on there, that goes on top, and everything works really, really well. And then I just mangle it together, but the camera's still on the stand.
Yeah.
So the outcome is the same.
Sure.
You know, now I'm by not following the steps, I'm probably changing the structural integrity of that device, which might be a problem in the future. That the camera might fall off that stand today. Yeah. Who knows? So there might be a problem. So my thing is, yes, the process is important, and we want to venture into those areas. Now, if the person rejects it, we don't just stop. We carry on and we figure out a way to get through it. We don't make them do disputation. We offer it as an important part of what we're doing. If they reject it, then what are you going to do? You still got to try to help people and work on this thing that you're working on. So it's not that, you know, I'm some sort of rebel that's like, oh, you know, throw at the...
You're such a rebel. I mean,
it's been said,
you're a maverick.
It's been said many times.
Yeah.
And people, I don't know if you agree, people say I'm an enigma.
An enigma?
Yeah, I don't know if you...
No. Wrapped in a mystery.
Yeah.
Bundled up in a riddle.
Yeah, we'll stick with Maverick for today.
Maverick, yeah, it sounds cooler, I think.
So I'm not some Maverick that's like, I try to stick to exactly how things should be, and I've written about this a lot. So, you know, there is importance in that. But I'm still faced with a live, real person and have to work dynamically, and therefore cannot just stick to the script every time, because it's just not going to work.
Sure.
So, you know, an REBT does allow for that flexibility. Like we've said a number of times on this podcast, you can challenge the G, you can challenge the A, you can directly challenge C, you can skip D and go to E. You can start at E if you want. Yeah. You know what I mean? If I've got a 5-minute conversation and they're going, oh my God, I'm bricking it about this performance. Yeah. Okay, just remind yourself, it's not the end of the world. You can tolerate this and you don't. Okay, well, I'm not doing any G, A, B, C, D. Yeah. I'm just doing E there.
Well, I guess also here, this is the pragmatism aspect of REBT and that flexible aspect. Yeah. You know, the example I always give people I work with is, you know, for a performer that's just about to go and perform and you're feeling really anxious, probably don't want a philosophical discussion about goals and what makes a good person. Yes. You probably just want to feel better at that particular time.
To get through the performance.
I remember we were speaking to, we were doing some coaching work. I'm going to talk about my work here. And I was speaking to a coach who was the head coach for the England women's rugby team. And he said at one point, they were in a game where they were losing at half time. And it was kind of like an important game, but also one that the players expected to do well in. And he was speaking to one of the players. And he was like kind of really hot on coach-athlete relationship, empowerment, all that, which the evidence would suggest is really important, right?
Of course.
And he's speaking, and he said to the player, like, what do you think, or how are you feeling about, you know, about this game? Yeah. And her response was, I don't effing care. Tell me what the F I should do. Yeah. So that's a really good example. Like at the moment, like I don't need all that other theoretical stuff that comes before. I just want to focus. I don't need
the autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want it. Like at the moment, maybe tomorrow.
When you're coaching me.
Yeah,
I'll have it, but at the moment, just tell me what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And then he was like really shocked by this and was like, oh, like, do I just do it now, or is it bigger picture time? Like, what do I do? Yeah. So I guess what you're saying with REBT is this is the importance of the practitioner is identification of what's needed now.
Oh yeah, you got to do what works at the point of the conversation. Yeah. You know, and I think You're trying to obviously always stick to the framework and stick to theory and follow your training, but you have to sometimes hold it lightly and sometimes hold it tightly. You know what I mean? So to me, if you're trying to be a pragmatic practitioner, then you can't hold onto theory too tightly.
Sure.
You know, it's weird because you're always within theory. You know, when I'm offering up rational suggestions and I'm just in A, I'm obviously still in the theory. Yeah. I'm not suddenly outside theory. What I mean is I'm outside of the normal processes you would see in the books and how we would be trained. Gotcha. I'm outside of that process now. I'm still comfortably within theory.
Yeah.
but I'm using REBT in a way that's more flexible and pragmatic, which really is embedded into REBT. It's just not as obvious and plain and explicit as the G, A, B, C, and here's what you assess first and here's what you do second. That to me is great when you got like 45 to 50 minutes, you have a sit down, great. But brief conversations, which often happen in the performance environment, then why would you even attempt to go from G to E?
Yeah.
You're basically going to do it badly.
Sure.
Why would you want to do something badly? You might as well do one thing really well.
Time is of the essence.
Time is of the essence.
That'd be a good paper title.
That'd be a good book title, Windy Dryden, if you're listening. I think we've exhausted that.
Yeah.
And you've exhausted me.
Before you go, a quick reminder. If you're serious about improving your performance or supporting your team's mental edge, check out sportingbounce.com. It's the go-to directory for finding qualified sports psychologists across the UK and Ireland, whether you need in-person support or online sessions that fit your schedule. From building confidence and focus to managing stress and recovery, sports psychology can make a world of difference. So don't leave your mental game to chance. Visit sportingbounce.com today and start your search for the right professional to help you excel. That's sportingbounce.com, your connection to expert sports psychology support. See you in the next episode, everybody.